local board does the same. Sorry, Aaron.
You're
So
right.
in going to UCAR and looking up our local stats, it is a couple months behind, which is annoying, but it's for our purposes, it'll probably just work just fine. It'll probably work just fine. One of the numbers I want to see is percent of original list price that the seller got. So in this market, we're getting a little less in 2024 versus 2023, right? And so that's what they're getting. So one of the numbers I want to compare, and also you can see days on market. So days on market, they're increasing a little bit. It's taking a little bit longer, 10% longer to sell a home. So one of the and now what about me? What do I do? And so my specific numbers, you can go to Rapid Stats, and you get to Rapid Stats on utahrealestate.com, and then you go Stats, Rapid Stats, and that takes you over here. You can, on the left-hand side, you can go to Agent Metrics, and you can go to Agent Efficiency, and this is how Dan Dixon does, right? And you can see that some of those stats that I want to compare are, for me, is right here. And so actually, I'm doing a little worse than I was the prior 12 months. So the last 12 months, I'm getting 96%. The prior 12 months, I was getting 99, and then sold. That's to the original list price. Then sold to the last list price, I'm getting 98% versus almost 100%. To the last list price in the prior 12 months. And then, we're also having to give away a little bit more. You can see these stats, how they change. For me, it's kind of interesting. I've had a couple bigger listings this year. I've had several multi-million-dollar listings, and so a small price adjustment is an actual big number, and so that's why my numbers are a little bit skewed that way. But to create some of the slides we're going to be talking about, that's where you might be able to find the information. It gets from your local board, get what these stats are, how stats may be moved, or how the current market is. And then in Rapid Stats, click on Agent Metrics, Agent Efficiency Report, and you can kind of see, what your last 12 months are, and then the prior 12 months to that are for those stats. So that's where you can find those. All right. Well, with that, Aaron, shall we get started officially?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So today we're going to do the CMA, we're going to do two things. One, we're going to do listing presentations, and then also we're going to do a little bit on CMAs. And so we'll open up the CMA to a general, general, like, hey, how do I do a CMA? And, some best practices there. And then also, I hope some people have some specifics. Kelly sent me a specific last week, and I'll ask her to talk about that with the group in 20 minutes or whenever we're ready for that. So hopefully she's still around, or she comes back before then. So she just left the screen. But oh, hey, she's back. But yeah, well, let's talk about some CMAs and some of the challenges you're seeing with some of the properties that you have to evaluate, and hopefully we can tackle some of those together. So with that, let's get over to kvCORE and Core Presents and go through the listing package and how to modify that. Aaron, am I sharing my screen, or are you?
I thought you were going to, but I can if you want me to.
Oh, I sure can.
Okay.
All right. So that's the wrong screen. Let's share a different screen. Let's do this one. All right. So just for a reminder, let's remember how to get to Core Present. I'm going to move this window here, otherwise it looks like I'm talking to the side of you, but now I'm talking straight at you. All right. kvCORE has the hamburger here. If you expand that, you can see marketing is one of the drop-down options. And from there, you can go to Core Present. And when you click on that, it kicks you straight over to Core Present. So that's how we navigate to Core Present. And then when you're creating a presentation for a client, there's two ways to do it. I shouldn't have clicked off Core Present. One is you can create it and then share it with that specific client if you already have them loaded up into kvCORE. If you don't have them loaded up into kvCORE, you can get a link to share with them, or you can go ahead and create a contact within kvCORE and then create a listing presentation for that person. So this is my wife. So if I wanted to give her a core present, I could just open up her contact, scroll down, and then I can go right here, add listing a core present, and then that will take me over to core present for a listing presentation. So there's a couple different ways to do it, just depending on what you got. So I am going to exit out of that, but those are the several different ways to link a core presentation with a specific client. So let's go to the main page of Core Present, and what we're talking about today is how to modify our listing presentations to be exactly what we want when we deliver this message to our clients. And so up here on the top right, once we're in here, we can click on the presentation library. And there'll be several things in here that are preloaded by our marketing team that are awesome that we can use. And then there's also the ability to create your own slides. And so everyone will have, slides that look like this. The premier service, your real estate partner matters. And so you can click on these slides and have them be in your slide deck as an option for when you create Core Present. Erin, how many, let's see.
So there's 12 different slides in there. When we went over the listing presentation last week, if you weren't on the call, you can go to Remax of Utah and the recordings there. But we have the 12 different slides in here that you can see throughout. And we can also do custom ones too that we've done for Dan Dixon. We did some custom slides in there as well. And this is where you would go upload them. But everything that we did that's more generic to Remax Associates is already in there for you.
And this is a really good, different, a place where you can kind of see the difference. So this is a slide that Core Present will allow you to make just by yourself. My testimonials, it looks like this. It's good, right? It's not bad, but Erin and her team can change that and make it look better and make it, kind of look like this, right? And you can modify it any way you want. And so if you want to do a custom one, which I chose to do, it looks a lot better. And then it also looks way more cohesive throughout your listing presentation. And so when you're doing your listing presentation, it's not kind of, anyway, the presentation is way more cohesive. So I definitely recommend doing that. But there's 12 slides that are going to be preloaded in these various sections. We tried to get these into a flow in different sections that make sense. So I wanted to put why I'm the right fit. I wanted to have several slides. And then in the market analysis, I wanted to have different slides. In the marketing buyer activity, I wanted to have different slides. Everyone's are put in the same places that I thought was the right spot. If you want them in different spots, super easy to do, right? Erin can do that for you. And so if you're like, hey, I'd rather have this marketing value in this area, that's certainly an easy, we can do that, right, Erin?
Yeah, for sure. Get with me and we're able to go and change that for you.
Right. So there's a couple things I want to show you here. Is one, what is in your package, and then two, how to create something if you wanted to. So if you wanted to, like we talked about before, have some stats and you wanted to upload those stats, this is how you would do it. You would come into your the slide library, and then you'd add a slide. And from here, you can create a slide. And so you can do so a couple different ways. You can choose a layout, with your headline here, and then have your words in here, and you can put whatever you wanted, or you can upload images. And so you can upload just a PDF that you create, or you can upload a video, which I haven't played around with, but Matt Barton probably would like that. Or you could upload just, your images, right? So if you had, GIFs or JPEGs or whatever that you wanted to upload, you could do that here. The one thing that I would pay attention to is when you're uploading your own slides, they don't automatically convert super well from landscape to portrait. And so if you want to print these listing presentations, when you do print, it will automatically try to do its best to convert a portrait or a landscape to a portrait. And sometimes it works well and sometimes it doesn't. So just be cognizant of that when you do print, if you do print, that it may change something and you might not love it if you do it yourself. Anything to add to that, Erin?
No, I think that you went over everything, so.
Okay. And
Hey,
so when
Dan, hi.
yeah, Haley.
Just really quick, have you noticed if one or the other, landscape or portrait, seems to be more consistent or better? Like if you just kind of do everything more portrait, do you have a better outcome if you print, or is there not a difference?
So, go ahead, Erin. You got an answer.
So I would say you're gonna want to do it horizontal for everything if you're going to choose one or the other. Portrait when you're putting it in, I mean landscape, yes. So you're going to want to do it landscape for everything. If you're importing it and you just want one way, I would do it landscape, because when they pull it up on their screen, if it is portrait, it's going to be really hard to read some of the text, and so I would do it that way. Everything that we have imported for you guys, that's part of your listing presentation, or if you pay our marketing company to create one for you, we will do both. We will create it horizontal and we'll create it portrait, so that no matter if they're looking at it on their computer or they decide to print the PDF on their computer, that it looks nice for them. So yeah, I hope, does that answer your question, Haley?
Yeah, okay. It does. Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. And then when you're in here and you do create that slide, you can choose where you want that slide to be stored, right? You can choose which subheading, so that when you then go to create the presentation, it'll be in the right spot. So that's how that works. And here you can see the web view or the PDF view. If you want to see how that looks for the slide that you created, it'll rotate it here before you actually save and add it to your library. Okay. Any questions on just creating a slide or adding slides here? Again, Erin and our marketing team have added these to your core present. And so you should have these here. And then I'm going to go through making one of these along with a CMA so that we can, and then assemble it at the end and you can see a final presentation. Okay. All right. So when you get into Core Present, there's a couple different things you can do in here. You're right. You can create a presentation for anyone. You can create a presentation for a buyer. Today we're creating presentations for sellers. And so, yeah, you click Start here, an address. I'm going to do my old address because I just think it creates some problems that are really good for CMA discussions, just based on where it's located. So that's my old address. And then the very first thing that you have to do, and this might be the most important thing you do for the CMA portion, is you got to correct the square footage, and it has to be done here. It's I don't think you can do it after the fact.
No, you have to do it here or you have to restart. So make sure you're paying attention. And if for some reason you go through, I've seen this where if you have an address in and the square footage is wrong, you just go to previous and it will jump to this screen, and then you have to put the address in again and then fill out the right square feet. So just make sure you're doing it on the screen.
Got to do it on the screen. Bedroom count, not that big of a deal. Year built, not nearly as big of a deal. This is the most important thing. So in Utah, many of us have basements, and the way that our counties report living square footage is they separate the basement from above grade square footage. And so if it's a 2-story, you'd see probably 2 stories listed on this, but you wouldn't see the basement, so you'd have to add in the basement. So this property is a rambler. It has a cold storage, right? And so when we list on the MLS, we often include our cold storages as part of the living square footage areas. So this number, I can't simply double it. I'd have to double it plus some. Now, if I didn't know this property had cold storage, and I didn't add that in at this point, it wouldn't be that big of a deal because the way the square footage is bracketed, within a 50 feet or 100 feet, it's going to be pretty darn close. So not as big a deal to get the square footage perfect as much as in the vicinity. And so I'm just going to use that as the total square footage here and then go to the next slide. I know that my bedrooms are five because I had the finished basement, right? So if you don't know exactly what that is, it's not imperative that you get it right here. But this number you want to get as close as possible and include the basement. Okay. So going on to the next step. We get asked this all the time. First thing I want to tell you is there's not the ability to separate ramblers from 2 stories here on property type. It's just, is it a single family or a townhome or attached or, whatever the case may be. Unfortunately, there's not a way to drill down further. You would do that when you go look at the comparables you're choosing later on. You would look at which ones you feature or like, or even eliminate if you wanted to eliminate 2 stories. So at this point, we can't do that, but so know that. Bedroom count. So here's an interesting thing is it only looks at five bedroom homes, right? So mine is a finished rambler. So it had 2 bedrooms in the basement. But I might also want to see unfinished ramblers and see how I compare. And so if I leave it here, I'm only looking at homes with exactly 5 bedrooms. And so that kind of doesn't make sense, right? Like there may be a finished basement with 1 bedroom, and that may be a relevant comp, but I wouldn't see it unless I move this right here. So for most of mine, I'm kind of moving it 1 or 2 on either side just to make sure I capture those. I think a 7 bedroom at 3,000 square feet would be weird, but whatever. We want to make sure that we're at least seeing those. The default for square footage is going to be 20% on either side. If I had too many comparables here, I might want to move these a little closer, right? I mean, maybe a 2,500 square foot rambler isn't as comparable to 3,200 square feet, so maybe I'll move that in a little bit. Or if I didn't have enough, maybe I want to move this out to 25%. Right? So you can move those in here. The default, I think, is going to work well for us. So I'm going to leave that, but that's where you can manipulate this. Year belt, I'm going to choose to ignore it. Actually, I should probably not ignore this. So I'm going to not ignore this. So in this neighborhood, some of you may know it, some of you don't. So this is Point of the Mountain. Here's Salt Lake just north of us. This is Thanksgiving Point right here. Here's the freeway that runs through here. This section on the other side of the river, it's all brand new homes, right? This home here was built in 2010, so not totally comparable. So maybe I do want to look at the range and say, you know what, I don't want those kind of newer homes. So I'm going to eliminate that and watch a bunch of these little marks get eliminated when I bracket that, right? So those to me, maybe they're not relevant. And I mean, look how many comparables that went away. Maybe I'm like, oh man, now I don't have enough comparables. Let me clear that filter and get those back. You can do that as well. So you can play around to try to zero in on the comparables that are going to be best for you. Okay. So maybe I go here and I'm just like, I just get rid of the new ones, the ones that were built in the last couple of years. And maybe that's a little bit better. Oh, and then the year built, it's only 2010. So I want to maybe make it 2000. Okay. So we'll roll with that. Close date, the default is 6 months. The market over the last year, I mean, how much did the market go up or down? Did it go up by 10%? Haley, 1%? Right? So you're muted, but 1%? So it didn't move a whole lot, right? And so comps that sold 10 months ago are probably fairly relevant because it only moved 1%. So I want to go out a full 12 months, right? Because that's still relevant data. And you can see I'm getting a fair amount of comparables here, which is great. I want as many, well, I don't want like 80, but I do want, 20 to 30 comparables to consider. So that's good. Lot sizes, these are fairly similar neighborhoods, even the newer stuff. They're all kind of smaller and, HOA neighborhoods, and, we don't have a ton of half acres in this, area. So for that reason, I'm just going to ignore lot size as an option. Now, Core Present has some limitations, and one of the things we found some challenges on is that it wasn't catching all of the sold comps around the area for some reason. Aaron probably could talk more intelligently about it. But sometimes it wouldn't catch it. And so I think it's important to also do a CMA on the MLS and then compare it to what you have here. So this is the pretty picture that your client's going to like. I think the MLS is where the scientific data comes from. So a year or 18 months ago, I would say that it would be a must. Over the last several months, the last year or so, less than the last year, it's getting way better to catch all of the MLS numbers. Now, if you do a CMA and for whatever reason, the comp that you want is not in here, you can add that right here, right? And so you can add a specific comparable or a comp saying, hey, I want to include, MLS number 2002454. And then that would also be populated into your report. So if you're not comfortable with the number of comps, or if you know that there's a comp that exists that should be included, this is where you can add that. Okay. There was an issue that even when you'd add a number, it just couldn't find that comp. If you have that, contact Erin, and she can contact the kvCORE. I'm creating more work for you, Erin. She can contact kvCORE and she can escalate that as an issue. But again, that has been less and less of an issue. I haven't seen that happen in several months.
We haven't been seeing it happen in like 6 months plus. It had to do with a sold feed that we were getting, and that's all been fixed. So hopefully you guys don't run into that at all. But if you do, I would love to know so that I can report that there is an issue, and then they'll look at getting it fixed. But we shouldn't run into that again. So we should be good.
Awesome. So one of the features I really like about kvCORE with this mapping feature that is highlighted right here when we look at it this way is if I were to run comparables on the MLS, and I would say a mile radius around the subject, right? It's that little orange house right here. I wouldn't catch these comparables that are outside of a mile, right? And maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. But one of the reasons why I like this home as a CMA is because I want to catch some of these homes that are just outside of a mile. And if I only did a mile search radius on the MLS, I wouldn't see these. And one of the reasons why is this particular neighborhood has some demographic challenges that make it such that going a little bit over a mile makes a ton of sense. And you could argue that to an appraiser. It's got a freeway running right through the mile, right? And so, there's that barrier. There's a river here running on the west side of these homes. And so there's that barrier there. And so when I look at, these homes that are built right here, this is a neighborhood called Cranberry Farms. It was built by Ivory. My home was built by MacArthur. And so these homes, I think, are super relevant. They're similar in size and all that stuff. See, this home, I just didn't even know it, right? It's a 6-bedroom, 3,200 square foot home that's built, sold 6 months ago. I'm like, that's a really relevant comp. I want to add that. So now that I know it's there, I can look at it here if I wanted. Say like, oh yeah, that looks. I mean, it's a 2-story, but like that, it's the same brick and the same stucco as my house. Like this should be a comp that I'm considering. And so when I go in there, I didn't do it right. But when I go in there and find it, there it is. I can just add that to the comparables. So now that's my sold match went from 23 to 24. You can see it's a little darker red here. So I can look at each one of these comparables and be like, oh, does it make sense to add something that's only 2,500 square feet? Like maybe not. 26, maybe that's a little small. 39, little big, but maybe I do want to add it to my comps because it's my seller likes that. So I can do that there. Again, you can click on some of these and figure out which comps you want to add. But this is one of the features of this style of presentation where it catches some of these comps that are on the fringes, and I can choose to add them if I want.
Dan, are you just hovering on those little dots or are you clicking on them? Or
Yeah,
initially?
I'm
Is it a
clicking
hover?
on them, and when they're like grouped together like this, it's
Yeah.
kind of cool. Watch this; they'll do this like little like spread
Spread.
out thing, right? And then I can choose which one I want to click on.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
I can also zoom in a little bit better if I wanted to and say, okay, well, which one of these are actually in, my area, right? Like I don't want these in Holbrook, right? These are, more that style home, and that's not really me, and so I don't want that. I want homes that, look like this guy here. Ah, but that's in the neighborhoods. That's bad example.
Hey, Dan.
Daryl, do you guys have a question? Oh,
This kind of style. Yeah, go ahead.
Dan, can you redraw your map at this stage and avoid the opposite side of the freeway and include the footprint that you want with the polygon, or will it let you?
It totally will let you, yeah. So you can choose any distance, right? 4 miles, get 215 sold comparables, or you can do what you're saying and say, you know what? I want to get in here and draw my own area. Let me get back to a mile here and say, I want, west of the freeway, north of 2100 north. This is that new interchange here. I want to stay inside the river, right? So I'm going to zigzag here and then make that my polygon and capture all those.
Perfect.
And, maybe I want to add this little thumb right here because this little neighborhood's cool too. Oh, that didn't do what I wanted to do. But yeah, you can do that, Daryl. Or go back to just the circle, and there you go. Okay. So once you have the comps that you want, and you fill this in, then you can go next to build CMA. And this is only going to have the 29 total matches here in the CMA. So this is what your clients really will see, this page here. And I can enter my price, I can enter a range, and then I also can toggle back and forth between total price and price per foot. And so when you get, an appraiser would tell you that a price per foot is not a great way to do a valuation, unless you're really talking about similar product type, then it gets a little bit better. But people love to see the price per foot. So that's how you get there. And then you can also say, well, I think we're somewhere in this range. And then when I do this, my little flag's going to pop up and says, Dan Dixon thinks it's somewhere in here. Dan, and then that'll also convert to a price per foot number. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm trying to run one alongside you, and when I hit build CMA, it says we had trouble building report. Please try again. keeps popping up. I don't, is there, does that make any sense, Aaron?
I haven't ran into that issue before when building it. Dan, have you ran into any trouble creating the report? Maybe you don't
I
have
have.
enough comps?
I tried it with 50 and I tried it with 4.
Okay. I would be
Okay,
happy to
keep
meet
going.
with you afterwards, James, and you can share your screen with me. And we can look at what you're running into.
Okay. Sorry, James. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. I haven't had that issue. Right. And so once you set a price, you can always change it, or you can set an exact one. Here's one. These buttons, to be honest, like I don't really know how to use these buttons. I think there's somebody smarter than I do that knows how to use them. So if anybody knows how to use them, let me know. You can put in what Adam thinks their property is worth. And Aaron, remind me who Adam is. I know it's an online valuation machine, but like I don't specifically know who they are.
I know it's like very similar to like a Zillow. And so they're just pulling it from 2 different places, but I couldn't tell you anything further than that.
So
It's
it's a similar online thing.
online data analysis program.
And the problem with Adam is they think the house is 1,500 square feet, and so that's why they think the home is worth 528,000 when it's actually 3,000 square feet and it's worth quite a bit more. So anyway, just so you know what exists, I typically never delve into these sections and people don't really ask me. So there you go. The one thing is comparables. I always go into comparables. This is where you can, highlight or remove comparables. And so in here, you can do those things. Highlight, like, feature, or delete. And so let's say this comp, for whatever reason, just a really poor comp, it just, like listed really low, and it's just, I don't know why, and I don't want to use it anymore or whatever. I can delete it. Let's say I deleted it and I was like, I actually want to have it back. You can hit the recycle button right here, and the recycle button will bring it back again. So when you do, there's the other 2 buttons are feature and like, and so these comps on your little bar graph here, these are the ones that are featured. And so if you want to feature it, you feature it here. If you just want to like it, so it shows up in this page here, the comparables page, you can have it liked. If you want it on the bar graph, you put it as a featured property. This is also a newer feature, is you can make an adjustment to this property. You can say, oh, I've been through this property. It didn't have that finished basement, so to finish the basement, that's a $50,000 adjustment or whatever. So I can add that in there. And now I've adjusted this property to, be a $600,000 property. So that will show up, on your bar graph page. So one of the things I talked about was this freeway, and an appraiser, if he drew a mile around the property, he'd find this as a comparable. And if I thought the property was worth $690 and I find this property, well, that's hurting my value. And I could talk to an appraiser about why we wouldn't want to use that. So I want to know it exists. So that's why I like knowing that it exists, but I also want to know why it might not be a good comparable. So, I can choose to delete that for my client, and so that it doesn't show up for them, or I can, feature or like it. So a lot of the times on active properties, I'll just keep them available just so we can see them. It's really the ones that have sold that I want to highlight, highlight the ones that I think are the most relevant for our comparable. Does that make sense? Any questions on this?
Dan, I've learned a lot too by watching you. Featuring and liking. I didn't realize when you press the feature button that it actually added it to the bar graph. So that's very great to know. And I like to know about the like as well. So, and the adjustment name, great feature that they just added. So
Yeah,
thank you.
and that's relatively new. That's within the last 4 months or so. So this is one of the ones that was outside a mile in Cranberry Farms, and I want to feature that one. This is another one in Cranberry Farms that I want to feature. This Shady View one, this is by the golf course, and this is up on top and it has views you can see, and so maybe that's not really relevant, right? And you can go through. This is a little bit north of the neighborhood and kind of a little crappier spot, and so let's get rid of that. You just go through and just pick your properties that you think are most relevant for your listing.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
Question on when you delete, there are two questions. When you like it and you don't feature it, but you click the like button, what happens to it?
So let's do this. Ready? So 3751 Holbrook Way. If I go over here, I can see 3751 Holbrook Way, right? It's an active property. It's on my bar graph here. So if I go back to my comparables and I say, well, I don't think that should be featured because this is a new neighborhood, smaller lots, kind of different. It's on that west side of the river. Like I don't want to delete it. I want it to exist, but I don't want it on that bar graph. So I'm going to remove it from feature to like, and then it's now gone on my bar graph.
Okay, so then when you delete something, does it take it just like on the MLS when you remove one from your CMA? Does it readjust its estimation of your value?
So Core Presents doesn't come up with a value for you. It only comes.
Or any of that?
There's nothing. It doesn't do that.
Okay.
So Dan, does it keep it part of that average of active comps if you've liked it and it's not on your bar graph, but this little average of active comps, you've only got one active comp even on there, and it's way low. So it must be calculating it because you've liked it and it's part of the report still. It's calculating into that average.
So we have three. Let's see this because I actually don't know the answer to this. So we got three here. So right now we're at 626.
Oh, you do have three.
So let's get rid of this guy. Right, we were at 626. Now it should be considerably lower. So the active went down to 589.
Okay.
So
it does affect it.
If you were to remove the one that's 799, it'll change your range as well.
correct. So if you don't want to have this featured because that's too big a spread, you can move that to like, and now it's a little tighter spread, and maybe you're like, this is probably not really like us because it's weird and it's ugly and it's got no curb appeal, and whatever the case may be. And now we can move that as well. It didn't get rid of it as an average, but it did remove it from the bar graph. Does that work?
Say that again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Go through the final outcome then. If you like it, does it include it in the average?
if it's featured or liked, it is included in the average.
Okay.
If it's featured, then it'll show up on your bar graph. Okay. If it's only liked, it will not show up on your bar graph, but both properties will be accounted for in your averages.
You better put them both on there for the average.
So Andy, you're right. They'll show you an average of the pending and solds and everything like that, but it doesn't have a Core Presents thinks your home is worth XYZ, right? It allows you to be the professional and say, I think your home is worth this number. Does that make sense?
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. So I do want to focus a little bit on this market assessment page. I ignored this for too long. This page is way more dynamic than I gave it credit for. And so let's look at this page as well. So it'll show you average monthly list to sale price, in May, this was what was happening. And as we've gone on to October, man, that list to sales price is just the difference is getting bigger and bigger. So the market is cooling, right? And this is the data that you can show your client that the market is cooling, which I think is really important. Fresh to stale. So you can see like, okay, of those active comps, how long have they been on the market? Well, this guy, they've been on the market for, where'd it go? For right here, for 106 days, right? And you can see that by the color, it's a little darker. So it's over here somewhere in the 14 to 16 weeks. This guy's been on the market for, this range by that color, and you can click on him and see, how long he's been on the market for 77 days, right? And so this is kind of interesting. It goes through the active properties and says, is the market hot or cold, based on, these color ranges, right? So that's kind of interesting to see what the market looks like for the active properties.
Who do I file a complaint with for those of us that are colorblind?
Who do I file a complaint with who? Missed it.
That'd be God, James.
He said he's colorblind.
Two other slides. This one I think is really interesting too, right? And so it does give you that price per foot. And so once you've gotten down to comps that I like, that are similar, here's my price per foot. So as my property increases in size, you can see this price per foot, which is, the average price per foot. You can see the properties on either side of this thing, right? And well, this one's, even though it's smaller, it's below the price per foot line. And so something's going on with that property, why it's not selling. This one's right at the price per foot number. I'm not sure why that's not, but you can kind of see this little dot graph along the price per foot line, which I think is really interesting. And you can tell your seller, like, hey, where do you want to be? Do you want to be listed way over, right? Or do you want to be right on that line? Because most of the properties that are selling are really close to that line. So I think this is a cool slide. And that's right here on the price per foot slide. So I think this is a pretty dynamic page, and this is exactly what your client will see. And you can click on it with them, or they, afterwards or before, whenever you send it, they can click on this as well. And there's some really good data points on here. So once we have the comparables we like, oh, and the other thing that I love about this is pictures. Right? Like I have been one of the people that will do a CMA on the MLS, and I want to show pictures, and I'll print out 80 pages because I want them to see what their home doesn't look like, right? I want them to see like, like you don't have this view. You're not going to get as much as this guy got, right? Or, why was this one listed for, where's the, I can't find the $7.99, right? Like, well, look at this. This is really pretty, right? Like this one's super pretty, and I'm sorry, but you're not. Or can you be? Can you look at this? Look like this, right? That'd be great. Then maybe we can get, $800,000 for your property. So I love this for that reason. It's really easy for people to kind of click through these photos and see what these other homes look like. So that's really good. So once we have the properties we like, once we have the comparables, we've got it all dialed in, then we click on create presentation. And here in the create presentation, we can do a couple things. First is we can create an image on the front page. And that image can come from, I've done Google Street View. Sometimes the Google Street View looks pretty good, and I've thrown that up there. Or if you have like an old listing photo, maybe it's not something you're going to put on the MLS yourself, but maybe you can put it on the report. The home doesn't really look like this, but I'll just choose a photo from my desktop. And which one is
While you're doing that, I want to say just adding that photo, you guys, really makes it look a lot nicer when presenting. The photo, when you go into the presentation mode, It looks really nice. So I would just go save it
Yeah.
off an old MLS number or go on Google and screenshot it. It really makes it look a lot nicer.
That wasn't the house, so it's not really fair because it's a pretty house and everything. But nonetheless, it just looks a lot better. So you
Excuse
can do
me,
that here.
again.
What's that?
Can we take them off of an old MLS if we didn't, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
You're not putting it on public sites, so you're okay. Just to
Okay.
have it on a listing presentation that you're sending to the seller.
thank you.
And so we did the work before on the slide library and choosing which slides we want to use. And so this is where you would then implement them, right? As you come here, you choose why I'm the right fit, add a slide. And then it's just as simple as picking which ones you want to use and not want to use. So I like this one. I like this one. I can go through and pick which ones I want to include and then add those selected slides here. And then I can arrange them how I want. So, I want the intro about me to be the first one, and I want, my social media thing to be the next. And I can go and I can arrange these any way I want. And then, and so once you've selected which slides you want, and you can also move the sections. Maybe I want my market analysis, the actual value of the home. Maybe I want that last. And so I'll move that whole section down to the bottom, right? And then once I have the right order with the right slides, then I come up here and I hit present and share on the top right. And it'll take a second, and then it'll create your presentation here. I can add that client. So I'm gonna add my wife, and she's gonna get an email that she's gonna click on and be like, what's this for? Let's see. Oh, it's weird. So I'll add her, and now she's now gotten the email. Here's a listing presentation for you. And so it's just that easy. You can also add a net sheet if you want, right? So we said the home was $680,000, or no, we said, like, we gave a range. We said, it's going to be somewhere between, these numbers, right? And let's say you owe $500,000 on it, right? And it's going to be a 2%, listing. So let's just call it 12,000 because I'm not good at math. And let's say we're offering 2%, so let's say 12,000. And escrow fee is 400, right? And this is going to vary somewhere around here. The taxes are going to be around there. There's HOA payoff, that kind of stuff. I do charge $295. That section was for Matt. We don't know what the closing costs are just yet. So I've created this. Let me preview this, make sure I want to see how it looks, make sure I want to add that. This is doing that weird thing. It does do this occasionally. But this is a cool slide, so let's use that. I think it's because my screen is smaller than it normally is because I'm sharing it. So that net sheet's cool. I can add a video link and tell someone like, hey, here's your property, blah, blah, blah. And then I can email them this directly, or I can just create a link and say, hey, here's your presentation, and they can click on the link. So it's really slick. And then this is what your client gets. So they get this as their listing presentation, and you can send it to them directly, or you can walk it through with them, at their house in front of them at the kitchen table. And once you're here, you can choose on a slide to jump to directly. Maybe I want to, maybe we're sick of talking about what the house is worth, and we want to just go directly to that CMA, which, sorry, I'm on the wrong spot. You want directly to that CMA, and here you go. And here you can look at comparables and everything. Yeah.
Will you go back to the print option so we can see what that looks like?
Yes, I can. So print, download and print. Yeah, Kelly, let's see what this looks like. So I've downloaded it. This is in a different window, so you guys probably won't see it. Let me jump over to it. So this is what they'll get.
But that is also if they download and print it. Most people are gonna look at it online and look at it the way that Dan was showing you. And one thing that I really like about that is like it's interactive, right? While they're looking at it. This would be if they want to download and print it themselves.
I have old people who don't do this.
So then you could download and print. Yes,
Yeah,
you could do that if you wanted to.
That's what I was curious about. Thank you.
My computer is slowing down. It doesn't like it. So that's how it looks, Kelly.
44 pages,
Yep, 44.
not even 80, just 44.
Mhm.
Not bad, not bad at all.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so any questions on that?
Dan, can you just show them, open it and like show when the person is looking at it and how they can like click on the different listings? And because I know you showed it as an agent, but I think it is very interesting to see it as the consumer getting it as well. Like it's very interactive and they can click on the different homes, they can look at the map and they can look at the photos throughout it.
Yeah, so this is what your client sees. This is the presentation. And so when they get to this part, you know, they can click on all of these things here, right? And so they can see that you think it's worth that. They can say, well, I remember this is my neighbor's house, and they can see the photos on it. They can look at, you know, some of the details, price per foot, listed, sold. They can look at, you know, how far it is, all that stuff, the listing descriptions. You know, this is exactly what they see.
What I think is really cool is Dan and I were looking at this the other day and you can actually see the analytics behind it. So if you really wanted to see that, you could see how many times your clients opened it up.
Sorry, Aaron. Yeah. So this is what your client sees. And when they look at it, right, it comes back over here to kvCORE. If you go to home, your presentation home, you can look at the reports that you've made, right? And let's see, I have one client that's a total computer nerd guy, and he looked at this 1,000 times. You can see he made me redo it a bunch. But you know, with him, you can see exactly what he looked at and when he looked at it. Let's see. Which report? You see, this is how many times he clicked on it and tried to open it and looked at various pages. So it's, you know, this is the creepy side of the internet, right? But you can see like when he's looked at it, you know, the pages that he looked at, and how long he was on each page. And so he kind of thumbed through these, you know, it took a couple seconds with each one, but then, you know, with like this page, you can see he spent quite a bit of time. I think the counter clocks out at 1:30. And so that's why there's several of these that clock just stop at 1:30, but you can see where his mouse is when he's looking at it. Like he was focused on this section and kind of looking at this and tracked around here. And it's really interesting. You can really watch him watch the presentation that you've created. Is this what you're talking about, Aaron?
Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting that you can go in and see it. So you can see that they're clicking on it and they're looking at the different properties.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
So you can see the little heat maps show where his mouse is during, you know, while he's looking at it. So
And there is a section in there that I did want to mention, you know, we did show you guys how to set up listing report emails where you can send out an automatic listing report of how much their home is worth. But some people don't love that because they're like, oh, it's computer generated. I'd rather give my own. You can quickly come in here and build just a CMA, not with the listing presentation, and send that to somebody. So if somebody's just curious of what their home's worth in the today's market, you can quickly put that together. Dan, would you say 5 minutes, put together just a
Yeah.
CMA and get that over to them? And it's generated by you, not just a computer. And so you don't have to attach all of the listing presentation to it. You can just send them the CMA section of it.
That's right. And that's what we did with this one is one I did earlier is just with this. So it's just this property, you know, the info we have on it, you know, you can look at that price per square foot graph. You can look at, you know, some of the more important information, and then even the comparables, right? As thumbing through the comparables, so it's a scaled down version as far as all the other things that I think Core Present does a good job as far as saying like, hey, I'm a good agent, and here's why. But it also has just the CMA and the quick and dirty, like these are the comps, and here's the pictures of those comps. Yeah. So, what questions, does anybody have any questions? We did sort of a CMA and really focused on the listing package and how to put it all together. This wasn't necessarily intended to be a CMA class, but I can answer some CMA stuff. Does anybody have any questions on that?
I do, Dan. Do you replace this completely? Do you do any of your CMAs in the MLS?
The majority, yes, I do. I probably do, almost all of them I'm doing both. I'll do a CMA, I'll do the MLS CMA. If someone's like, hey, what's my home worth? It's probably somebody I already know. And so I probably do the CMA on the MLS. And then, but like, honestly, this page is a new discovery for me. And so what I'll do, because this looks so much better, is that I'll convert the results from the MLS over to here, and this will be the presentation that I'm going to send to people. So I still do the MLS quite a bit.
Do you find that they're pretty comparable, the MLS comparisons to these?
2 years ago, I would say you have to do it on the MLS. Today, I haven't found any differences lately.
Okay, thank you.
It's doing a much better job aggregating all of the data. And further is this will aggregate data from Park City and from St. George MLSs. So if you don't have those MLSs, you can't get their sold data through kvCORE.
Okay, and on a transaction I'm working on right now, I did a CMA, I didn't do it in kvCORE, I did it on the MLS. I spent a few hours doing it and came up with my comps and presented them. And I try to control the process and let them control the decisions. They still wanted to go above me by $40,000. How do you handle that, Dan? And we did get it. We did. I mean, they were right. She got what she wanted, but I couldn't justify that. I didn't feel like it was the right place.
So this is what I would say. I would say, I'm sure you said these things, right? Like, you got the listing, that's the most important job. Good for you, right? And good for them for getting their number, right? So that's a win-win for everybody. I think what I would say is appraisals are retrospective in nature. And so all I have is the information on what has happened. I don't have information on what could happen. And so, yeah, like, could you get $40,000 more? Yeah, you really could. Your home is better for all these reasons, but the data really is right here. and this is what I think your property is worth, but this is your home. You're the one that gets to sell it and tell me how much you want to sell it for. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and start at 720, even though I think it's worth 680. Let's go ahead and do that. But, you know, in 10 days when we're not getting any showings or offers, you know, don't be surprised when I call you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Kelly had an interesting one the other day where, Kelly, why don't you tell us about the CMA question you asked me last week? You're muted. Sorry, Kelly. Sorry to put you on the spot. You're still muted. So Kelly had a property, and it felt like, and I don't know the answer to this, so Kelly, you nod your head if this is correct, but it felt like this was in a fairly straightforward subdivision with a lot of properties that were kind of similar. And the massive difference between this property and the other properties was it just had a really big lot, right? It kind of, these lots were kind of skinny, but this one was kind of long, just the shape of the neighborhood. When the developer plotted out the lots, it kind of created this like oddly shaped long lot. And she asked me, she's like, hey, what would be the adjustment for this particular lot? And that's really hard. Like an appraiser would want to do a paired sales analysis and say like, okay, I've had two exactly the same homes that have sold within a, you know, decent period of time, and one had a bigger lot and it added this much value, one didn't. But we don't have that, right? And so we're just kind of like guessing how much this would be. I think it's reasonable. And I was actually, when Kelly asked me this question, I was with an active appraiser, and I, you know, showed him the text. I'm like, what would you do here? And we both said the same thing: is we'd probably treat it like the way a builder would, right? And if you were to go into a new neighborhood and a builder has a lot premium, you know, on a particular lot, versus like, oh, you want the primo lot, well, you're going to pay, you know, 10 to 15% more. That's kind of where we're at on lots like that are significantly bigger than, you know, some of the other comparable lots. Did I get that story right there, Kelly?
Yeah. So just middle of Bountiful, 1950s Rambler. Most of the lots are a quarter acre. This was 3/4 of an acre.
There you
So
go.
it was a very unusual lot, and I was struggling just to add that bit for the acreage. So yeah, big help. Thank you. And I hadn't thought to look at it like a builder would as a premium.
Good. Okay. Anything else? Well, hey, we're over time, so we'll cut y'all loose. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully we learned how to, you know, kind of compile the information in the listing presentation. I really do think these presentations highlight you as the professional, make you look awesome. So Aaron has uploaded those slides that we created last week. And, you know, with that, you'll be able to create your own presentations. So best of luck out there.
Thank
Did
you.
Union Park have oh, that was a clap. Oh, thank you, Union Park.